particular session. I want us to put our hands together. Her story is phenomenal. I mean, she'll tell you where she came from. I was reading about her. I mean, lost the job at one point or the other and was able to metamorphose into this powerful lady that she is today. Ladies and gentlemen, she describes herself as a child of God, a finance professional, a personal finance and business coach, a certified life coach rather, and the founder of the Legacy Hub KE. Ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together as we welcome Susan Wanjiku.
Hi everyone. I am so honored to be here. I've met so many people that I only just see online, so I've been fangirling most of you all. I'm sorry for weirding you out. But my name is Susan Wanjiku. I'm very glad and honored to be here. I am a personal finance coach and a business coach. I'm also the founder of the Legacy Hub KE, which is a company I've founded for the purposes of coaching people to manage their finances better. So I want to take this opportunity to really thank Kate for this opportunity. I'm blown away by this event today. Thank you so much. Thank you for everything that you do. I also want to take this opportunity to honor my mom who's here. I'm not a step-mum myself. I'm not a mom yet, but I come from a blended family, and one of the things that made it all easy to just deal with is having a very stable, present, available, and emotionally intelligent mom to just help us go through it. So today I just want to honor my mom. You can stand and maybe wave. That's my mom, and I'm very glad to be here. So I think because of time, we can just dive right into what I want us to talk about. I don't have a presentation per se, because I feel like personal finances are more personal, mental, emotional than we care to admit. Yeah. So when it comes to being in a blended family, I'm going to be speaking from a point of a child who grew up in a blended family and how finances were handled and how they affected us then and how they've shaped the person that I became and the person that my siblings became and my steps and all that. Yeah. So before we get into that, I just felt like it is important to maybe just outline what I'm going to be mentioning. And I'm just going to talk about 3 things in particular. Number 1, how exactly as an individual you should handle your finances because even before you handle finances in a marriage, that was one of the things that we struggled with. I struggled with when I got married, because no one taught me how to handle finances. I never grew up in a family where there was education on financial literacy. And so I started my home and I got into my home with no idea exactly how finances are supposed to be handled. And you know that comes with its own dynamics. So we are going to talk about how should you as an individual, live alone as a wife in a blended family, as a mother in a blended family, how you as an individual, you should view your finances or think about your finances and the most important things that you need to consider in your own personal finance journey, because you cannot pour from an empty vessel. Right? So it's very difficult for you and your spouse or you and your children to harmonize your finances when as an individual you've not even reconciled the idea of having a healthy financial lifestyle or just having healthy finances going on. So as an individual, one of the things that I've seen so now how did I end up being a personal finance coach at my age? So what happened is that I graduated campus and then I got my first job in an investment company. I loved what I did. I put in hours for what I did. And then 3.5 years down the line, I walked into the office as an employed person and I left as a redundant person, and I'm in my 20s. So you're wondering, okay, this was my first job after campus and I've lost the job because apparently the company is having redundancies, right? And I remember the first person I called was my then fiancé, and I was just like, because we were smack in the middle of planning for our wedding, and having grown up in a blended family, that was like triggering my anxiety to certain levels, because I was like, now I'm the wife that doesn't have an income. Now I'm going to be the wife that has to stay at home and wait for the husband to bring in something. Now I'm going, like, it was just a whole, you know. And then after I communicated that to him and I was like, okay, so this is what happened at work today, I was still living with my mom and I was just wondering how I would have that conversation with her. I was still paying bills, helping out at home. I had a whole life planned out for me. And then in that moment, I felt like everything came to a standstill. And, you know, yeah, I don't have kids. I don't have, a husband. I don't have like big major responsibilities like school fees, but I had responsibilities. I had bills to pay. And I was in a position where I didn't have savings. I worked in an investment company, but I had no savings. I knew how to invest people's money. I was managing portfolios for people, but I had no portfolio at all. And in my line of work, I've worked with people who work in banks, people who manage serious kind of money, and they don't have savings and they don't have investments. And in that moment that your job goes or something as major as losing your source of income happens, it is like, yes, I was young, I was in my 20s, but it just changed something in me. Right? So I lost a job and I don't have an emergency fund. I'm planning a wedding. I'm helping out with bills at home, etc., etc. And so I remember, of course, I took like 2 or 3 months just wallowing in sadness and just wondering what would become of me. And you know why? I felt like people who experience like retrenchments and redundancies are like people who are way much more advanced in age, like in your 40s or maybe 50s. But that was happening to me in my 20s. So after I was done wallowing and after the wedding, I sat down and I asked myself, Susan, what are you good at? What can you do? Because if I stayed home waiting for my husband to come home, the amount of foolery I would cook because I am idle in that house, we would not live in peace. Growing up in a blended family, your money and the resources are scarce. So when I was in campus, the only thing I had to manage that took me through school was help. And so I learned to budget and I learned to manage my money with as little as 20 Gs, right? If today you were to lose your current source of income, how many of you know that they have savings that would last them at least 6 months? Thank you. Show of hands. Yeah? Let's give her a round of applause. So we have quite a number of people that are confident, like they didn't even think about it. They're just like, I know, if I lose my job today, I have savings that could last me a minimum of 6 months. Now, why are we talking about a minimum of 6 months? Because in our current job market, unless you're very well connected or super lucky, you're lucky if you get another job within 6 months, correct? Most people have to wait 2 years, heck, even 3 years for them to even learn something close to what they already had. In that moment, you're already frustrated. You're wondering what's going to happen to you. And God forbid you have school fees, bills, and a family that, or rather, relies on that income. And so for me, personal finance, I keep telling people time and time again that getting my money under control is the new self-care. Right? Self-care is not just about the spa dates and the massages and all that. It's also getting your money right. Correct? So as an individual, and for me, even as a woman, it was very important for me to, because I saw what being in a blended family that is not very fully functional, what it does to the family economically. So you're very many, the resources are scarce, so you don't even get the best of what you even, the bare minimum of what you deserve as a child, right? And so for me as an individual, one of the things I tell people is that before you even think about finances in a marriage, finances in a blended family, you want to think about my finances as a person. So what I'm saying is that we all need to take responsibility of our money. My money is not, no one can do that for you. Correct? And so I want us to talk about the 4 areas of focus that every individual should just focus on or concentrate on, even before we bring it to the family level. And the first is, I'm just going to list them down: debt, investing, retirement, and unequal income. So when it comes to debt, even as an individual, of course, if you're getting married, you're bringing all your baggage and all the good things into it. So if we get married, whether this is in a blended family or just an unblended family, if you have debt, that is something that you want to think about. That is something that you want to seriously consider. And that is something that needs to have an actual monthly plan on how you want to get out of debt. You see, I think of debt as slavery for the modern people, right? Because, and as a financial consultant, I'll tell you, of course, we all know that there's good debt and bad debt. So not all debt is bad. So in this case, I'm talking about bad debt, consumer debt, money that will do nothing now and in the future to either increase your income or to increase your wealth. And a lot of us have bad debt. It's the reality. We are taking out Tala, Mshwari, because they are fastest to get and all that. I don't want to ask how many of us have mobile loans as we speak. I don't want to ask, right? It's because, I mean, kamwezi kamefika ile kona. Unajua ile kona ya 25th, 26th hapo, and the money, your salary is still not yet there. That's when the Mshwaris, Talas, etc., they really come through for us, right? Definitely. But then, the fact still remains that that is bad debt, because that's not money I took out for an investment. That's not money I took out for a business. That's not money that I took out to increase my income in any sort of way. So you want to actively think about your debt, and not like in a guilty kind of mindset. You want to think about debt in terms of, okay, I didn't get into this much debt overnight, so it's not going to take me, it's not going to be an overnight thing for me to get out of debt. So you want to have a working monthly repayment plan for most of your debt, whether it is good or bad. Okay? The second thing you want to think about on a personal, individual level before you now marry that into your family is investing, right? Now, I keep telling people that saving your money in a bank account will not make you wealthy. No one ever built wealth by having money sitting in a bank account. So you have to think about investing your money. Now, we have this thing that happens to most of the people. Even I used to do that. How many of us spend first before we save? On a monthly basis. Like, I'm going to pay rent first, utilities, electricity, car, etc., etc. before, and then whatever is left is now what I will consider as whatever is left for saving and investing. How many of us relate to that situation? I used to be there. Sometimes I do that, right? But for you to, you see, most people give the reason as to why they don't invest enough or invest at all is because there's no money left to save, there's no money left to invest. But the truth of the matter is that as long as you're spending first and then thinking of saving and investing later, you're never going to have enough to save, you're never going to have enough to invest, because there is always going to be something tagging at your paycheck that month. Like, if it's not your kids, it is your car that's due was done for what, it is this payment that was due, it is that, this, and the other, right? And so when you're thinking about personal finance, you have to actively think about investing, and not investing in the sense that I need, I've met people, because me, I coach the common mwananchi, right? And one of the things that the common mwananchi will tell you is, Suzi, salary yenye niko nayo, for me to even, I don't even have enough for my bills, leave alone enough to save or to invest. And then I take them through the budgeting class, and then we are tracking their spending, and we are looking at how much is going into transaction charges. No one ever looks at that. We are looking at how much is going into personal care and grooming, I call them talons. Our talons are hella expensive, right? Your nail do, your hair, etc., etc. And that's like 12 Gs or 15 Gs. Hell, even just for you to look good, but for some reason we don't have enough left to save or to invest, right? And so one of the things you'll come to realize is that when it really comes down to a personal level, most of us, it's not that we don't have money left to save or to invest. We just have our priorities the other way around. So what I encourage people is that to try and build a culture where you work towards, it's not something, I wouldn't even want to stand here and tell you that now that is what I do, check, 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 but I work towards saving and investing first before I spend, because that is the whole definition of paying yourself first. A lot of us are working so hard for our money, but you forget to pay the person that does the actual work, that puts in the actual hours, right? So you're paying your landlord, you're paying your beauticians, you're paying everyone else, but you're not paying the person who's actually getting the job done. The other thing that we want to think about is also retirement on an individual level. Now, in Africa, we have this very sad thing where instead of passing down generational wealth, like even in Kenya, I think we could count the number of trust fund babies, right? It's not even a common thing happening, like we are passing down wealth to our kids, but we have a lot of people online complaining about black tax. And the reason why people are complaining about black tax is because we don't plan for our retirement. We just think, okay, now because I have NSSF or because I'm a business person, we don't actively think about retirement because we're in our 20s and we're in our 30s, and that is such a far-fetched thought. Even in a family dynamic, that would come to affect you much later, because if you can't pay for medical insurance in your 70s, your kids are the ones who are paying medical insurance for you. And because of that, they're unable to meet their immediate needs or expectation in order for them to grow their wealth and to grow their investments and all that. So you want to also think about retirement. Now, when that comes into like a marital setting or in a blended family setting, it is very difficult for someone who's not figured themselves out in terms of like their finances to now come into a marriage setting and bring something to the table. Correct? If I ain't got it as an individual, it's very difficult for me to bring anything to the table as a wife. Correct? And so one of the reasons why my mother is such an inspiration to me is that I saw her level up on so many different levels, and I strongly believe that I am who I am today because she leveled up. Because she decided to take control. When there was no other option, right? And so I keep telling women, because of my experience and because of how I grew up, I believe that every woman should be responsible for their money. That every woman should be responsible and should understand investing. That every woman should be responsible and should understand estate planning. Right? That every woman should be responsible and should understand creating wealth, not just making money. Right? Because when you get into a marriage and you get into a blended family and you're maybe like the stepmom who comes in, there's this whole dynamic in terms of you're not even, leave alone accepted as like an equal member in that family. Even as a person, sometimes it's difficult for you to be accepted in. Now, couple all that with how are you going to be made in charge? Are you going to have some wealth in your name? Are you going to have, some cash that is underused to manage and to steward? Most times you'll find that I've seen situations where men sort out their kids and their whatever, and you're just over there and you don't even know. You don't even know that, it's like that situation where it's like, these ladies who are bought 4 cars, but you just have the car you're driving around, but the logbook is not in your name. That's how a lot of us are approaching finances, sometimes in blended, not just in blended families, but just in marital setups, right? So one of the things that have come, and I saw this with my mom, and it is just being able to understand that there is Susan the wife and there's Susan the person, and I am responsible for Susan the person. Correct? I'm responsible for Susan the person. And before Susan is the wife, Susan is a person. Correct? So you want to actively think about your money and to actively think about your finances and to be actively involved in management of finances in your home. Correct? Because even if you're not from a blended, like for me, it's just myself and my spouse, but we still argue and fight about money. Now, how much more in a blended, mixed up, family kind of like setup? Right? It may not be the entire gospel truth, but it's not, finances in marriage are not one of the easiest things to maneuver. So how do we go about managing finances when it comes to blended families? So number one, you need to communicate and set expectations. right? If you're coming into a blended family setup or you're already in it, but there's not so much clarity as to how, and this doesn't just apply in a blended family setting, in any family, it is important to communicate and to set expectations. So what exactly are we communicating about? Have you sat down to hold the hard financial conversations? Are you talking about how much debt you're in? I've coached people before that are like, X amount of debt and my husband doesn't even know about it. And my wife doesn't even know about it. And that's risky, right? That's a liability for the entire family, not just you as an individual, right? You also want to discuss responsibilities. You want to discuss the issue on joint accounts and separate accounts. And this is a whole debate. Right? I don't know if you guys have been online and following, things like Money Mondays and stuff. You see ridiculous things of what happens in households where people have joint accounts and then the other person just suffices the other one properly and just ghosts them, right? And it's because most of us we've not discussed this with our partners or with our family members, the place of separate accounts and the place of joint accounts in the family. I don't believe that there's one that is better than the other. I just believe that there should be clarity and open discussion as to how do we want to merge our assets and our finances together as a couple or in a blended family setting. So you want to discuss whether to merge or not to merge your money. And if you want to merge your money, you also want to discuss how exactly that will come into play. And obviously, just by the silence right now, money is just an uncomfortable conversation. Correct? It's just uncomfortable to talk about, to hear about. It's just uncomfortable. And that is one of the things we need, and this is one of the things I love to just normalize in my coaching sessions, with my interactions with my friends. It's to normalize money conversations. I'm sure if I asked you guys how many people in your circle know even how much you earn, like with Africans, it's hush hush. It's like FBI top secret NSA kind of stuff, right? It's like most of us, sometimes even your spouse doesn't know exactly how much you earn. Correct? Because money is hush hush. Why is it hush hush? It is hella sensitive. Right? And so why I'm bringing this up is because we shouldn't have the expectation that now, because we are standing here and saying, we should have open conversations, that should be an easy conversation to have. We want to get into it understanding and knowing that this is going to be a difficult conversation to have, but a necessary conversation to have. So just because something is hard doesn't mean it can be done. Correct? So understanding, getting into it with an understanding that this is going to be a very difficult conversation to have, it already prepares you for it. Because I don't believe that unless someone in the audience tells us like, me in my household, this thing is just flawless. We just get each other. She's the yin to my, we just get it. It just flows. Rarely is that the case, if we are being very honest, correct? And so you want to have discussions, and especially about whether to merge or not to merge your money. Because we are going to also, one of the things that, Kate also wanted me to address today was also how to protect your interests as a stepmom in a blended family. Because husbands die, and husbands fall sick, and kids can turn on you, and etc., etc. These are realities that are happening on the ground. These are things we've grown up with and we've seen. Correct? And so as a woman, how do you protect your assets? How do you protect your financial interests in a blended family? And so from the get-go, in fact, I keep telling people, one of the things that I've learned over time is that when things get too complicated, just go back to the basics. When things get utterly complicated, go back to the basics, right? And so we're like, how did we get here? We got here because we never even discussed expectations with each other. How did we get here? We got here because we didn't even actively define how these finances would be handled. How did we get here? We got here because we did not clearly define roles and responsibilities when it comes to finances in the house. And so that is one of the things that you want to consider. The other thing, if you're in a blended family, I feel like creating a budget for your household and actually sticking to into it is one of the surest ways of just enabling that situation to be as seamless as it could be, or as seamless as possible. Most of us think that budgeting is having a list of bills. So you have like rent, 40,000, electricity, X amount, etc. And that's not budgeting. Budgeting is telling your money where to go instead of wondering where it went. So at the end of the month, a lot of us are just wondering, na hii pesa ilienda wapi? You know, maybe you are given cash, maybe you guys are having an allowance thing going on, whatever, however you handle. But you need to actively decide beforehand where the money that is in this household, whoever brought whatever X amount, where exactly will this money go? And one of the things, I keep telling people a proper budget, it's half of it when you just have the list of your bills, but a proper budget should have these 4 things. It should have savings and investments, it should have debts, repayments, it should have mandatory bills and expenses, and then it should have wants and leisure. Right? Because it is unrealistic to say I'm not going to plan or budget for wants and leisure, because ukweli ni kwamba tuko na enjoyment. Serious enjoyment. Whether you budget for it or not, you will enjoy yourself. Right? So why not plan and budget for it? If you want to travel, plan. I keep telling you, the problem is not the traveling, the problem is not the designer. It is spending on those things when you hadn't planned for them. So it's all about planning. So when you sit down and in your household, you've made decisions. You have a constitution. You know X amount is gonna go here, because these are the things that bring conflict in homes. Like you spent X amount on this thing that was not maybe even discussed, or you spent X amount on something that was not even part of the plan, your partner was not aware of. And that's a whole wrong question to ask. It wouldn't be the first question that I would ask, where do I invest my money? I feel like by the time I'm getting to where do I invest my money, I should start by what are my financial goals. Because not everything in the market is for me. Just because crypto is in the market doesn't mean crypto is for me. Just because people are investing in the stock market and in index funds doesn't mean it is for me, right? So you want to first of all start by understanding what your financial goals are as an individual. Set financial goals as a family, as a couple, okay? And then from there now you can research on how different investments work, and then marry that to your financial goals, right? So this is my financial goal. What investment option would help me get to this goal as quickly as possible? It's not if you come to me and you're like, I have 50K, where do I invest it? If I'm biased towards money market funds, I'll just tell you to put it in money markets. If I'm biased towards crypto, I'll tell you to put it in crypto. If I'm biased towards circles, that is what I'll tell you to do. Right? But if you have clearly defined financial goals as an individual and as a family, it is easier to invest your money, because you know that you're just trying to find investment options, not what is being hyped, not what people are saying has money, but the right investments that would ideally align with your financial goals as an individual or your financial goals as a family. So you want to also educate yourself in investments, okay? The other thing, if you're in the blended family scenario, that you want to really educate yourself on is estate planning and wills. Yeah? So najua Wakenya tunagopanga kufanya hii kitu kwa sababu you feel like you're just calling death. It's like the moment I start doing estate planning or I start writing a will, it's like I'm preempting that I'm going to, I've seen people who think like that I'm, ni kama naita kifo. But I keep telling people it is a risk just to get out of your house. Today you came here, and to be able to go back to your family and to your kids, it's a risk you took, right? You're not so sure that you're going to go back to your kids today. Correct? You're not so sure you're going to go back to your family today. We walk around as if we are sure about that. Right? So I keep telling people, as long as you have some form of wealth, some form of money somewhere, you need to actually be able to have a way or a plan as to how that money or that wealth would be distributed in the case of your demise. Right? Again, a very difficult conversation to have, right? Because Gava is just out here collecting unclaimed money, and kids are not even going to school now. Wazazi wako na bank accounts mashamba kila mali na hata wako wanajua. kids don't even know how much their parents, like, and there's no, even if, maybe your kids are not of age, but at least, do you have someone, a custodian or someone that knows if today I was to die, this is how my wealth or my assets would be distributed amongst my family, right? And as a woman in a blended family, you want to understand where do you fall in that whole plan. Are you estate planning with your spouse? Is there discussions about inheritance in the case that you're not there or your spouse is not there? Very difficult conversations, very necessary conversations to have. Yeah? And then finally, you also want to normalize, and I just put this as the last thing because it is a contentious discussion. Normalize prenups, normalize post-snaps. Very contentious. Correct? Normalize prenups, normalize post-snaps. Because, again, emotional intelligence when it comes to money matters. I keep telling people one of the things that has been working for me as a young woman, and I'm not perfect at it and I'm learning, is to separate my heart from my hustle. Like my money and emotions, just no. Because sometimes we don't think when we bring like that kind of emotion. It's like, most of us think of prenups as, and I'm not saying that if you don't do it, there's something wrong with you, or if you did it, there's something wrong with you. But this is how to protect your assets in such a setting, so that it's not about, you take out the money aspect of that whole discussion, right? So normalize them. And if you don't really understand how prenups work and post-naps work, again, remember, we said that an investment in education will pay you the best return. Educate yourself, understand, instead of just completely just canceling that whole mentality and that whole mindset. Learn and educate yourself about how these things work and how they could be beneficial in a blended family setup or in a marriage setup. Then you can make your decision around it. Okay? I think I'm done, so I think I would take questions, and then, yeah.
Let's put our hands together for her. Thank you so much, Susan, for that. Very well said. Hiyo mahali ya prenup ndio imestua watu kidogo. But it is okay. You've cut both sides of the coin, and I think that was well said. So I'll just take two questions. Two questions very fast. Yes, we have one question here. I need one more question. One more question, and then I'll give out a couple of goodies. All right, one more question. So, ma'am, let's go ahead. Please put it on. Thank you. Just long press it? Okay.
It's on. So,
please introduce yourself kindly.
So, let me start. My name is Dr. Catherine Masitsa. I'm CEO at Samantha's Bridal. And you've mentioned something that's very close to my heart, the prenuptial agreements. Usually for maybe the people who do not know what prenuptial agreements are, you agree in case of a divorce or a separation, this is what will happen. But I just wanted to know, maybe if there's a lawyer in the house, if they could enlighten us if they're recognized in Kenya. Because there is the laws of the country in terms of what happens in case of a divorce, which some of those are enshrined in the Constitution. So sometimes you can come up with an agreement that cannot be enforced in the court of law. Yeah, so it's, I don't know, if there are any, I think it's a good thing you brought it up, but I think so that if you sign any agreement that is against the Constitution, it will not be enforced. And I think prenuptial agreements may not be. So I, so I think we need to research more on this. Thank you.
All right.
Wow, very well said. That's a very valid point. Any other question? Comment, compliment, feedback? Thank you so much, Susan. But before you actually go, I'll need you for this particular one. Okay. So I want to give out a few goodies, and I like Maureen Bandari, to come on over. She came with a lot of goodies for us. So we're giving out two gifts. You have two. Yep. Please, can I get a mic for Maureen, please? You have 2 companies. Nini yako sasa? Wewe ndio unatuambia juu. So she has 2 companies. Tell us about them, please.
Hey guys.
Hi.
My name is Maureen Bandari. I have 2 companies, as he says. My first child, I love to call my first company my first child, because it started out when I was in Mombasa. I'm a dark skin, as y'all can see. So getting someone to do makeup on me was a challenge.
All right.
And even getting makeup in Mombasa was a challenge, because, you know, light skin versus dark skin conversation that never ends. So I ended up starting it for myself. And then, you know, you do makeup on yourself, you go out, guys are like, where did you get this and that? And then you end up coming up with a business idea. So I started Bandari Beauty 3.5 years ago. We recently launched a store at Greenhouse Mall, so y'all are welcome to shop. Although we more or less specialize into skincare a lot nowadays, because I'm so passionate about skincare. And then me and my friends love to drink champagne, rosés, wines. So in my, you know, visiting people here and there, I realized, you know, have you ever been to a situation where you go somewhere, someone offers you a drink, but you're just like, there's something a little bit off, which ended up being the glasses, you know. Like, if let's say, for example, if you have like some really nice champagne, but the glass is not matching, there's that discomfort that comes with that. So, and with that, I ended up launching Wine Drop. So we just specialize strictly on wine accessories. So we are talking about glasses, we are talking about electric wine openers, we are talking about, you know, anything that can help you drink your drink with vibes, basically.
Absolutely.
So those are my 2 businesses.
Tumpige makofi tafadhali. And with that, I'm going to give each. So I'm going to give something from obviously Bandari Beauty and something from Wine Drop. So 1 Wine Drop, 1 Bandari. Or 1, it's only 1.
Yeah,
all right. So it's only from Wine Drop. All right. So this is my question, and you help us in this. She said something that was really catchy, and I hope it's not the quote for the budget. No. I saw most of you write that down. All right. So what are the 4 things that a budget should have? What are the 4 things? This is you now to pick. What are the 4 things that a budget should have? So we have a lady. Which one?
The second.
The one at the back?
Yeah.
All right. What are the 4 things that a budget should have?
A budget should include savings,
All right.
debt repayment, bills, the mandatory bills, and wants and leisure.
Is that it? All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's put our hands together for her. So she gets a special gift. So maybe we can bring it here. All right. Okay. All right. So we have 2 actually. So I'll give another person some. All right. So Maureen will take 1. All right. All right. Let's put our hands together for the lovely lady.